Well, George, it's all about chemtrail connections and the agenda tonight. The long-standing conspiracy theories of chemtrails are finally an open topic. It's out of the closet into legislation, with more and more states proposing and passing their versions of laws to try to stop chemtrails, geoengineering, weather modification, and toxic aerosol spraying in their skies. Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. has made some shocking, supportive public comments saying chemtrails are real and must be stopped. My guest, writer, author, and teacher Elana Freeland, known for her scientific, environmental commentary and deep research of classified issues, connects many things, including the long-time baffling skin ailment called Morgellons and recent strange alien-like lab test findings of Florida chemtrail and fog samples by Health Ranger Mike Adams. Her new book is called The Geoengineered Transhuman, The Hidden Technologies of HAARP, Chemtrails, 5 and 6G, Nanotechnology, Synthetic Biology, and the Scientific Effect to Transform Humanity. Here's part one of our conversation.
Hello, Elana. It's so good to have you with us here. We have so much to talk about.
Well, so much is going on with geoengineering. I've been in this movement now, the anti-geoengineering, for almost 20 years. And this is the first time that I have seen this many things breaking news. It's amazing.
After all of these years, Elana, of your intense scientific research, you're known for your commentary and your books on chemtrails, geoengineering, and ionization of the skies. What did you think when Secretary Kennedy recently stated that chemtrails are real and that he thought somehow DARPA was involved?
Well, first of all, I was shocked. I mean, in a way, Bobby, he's basically an honest guy who admits his errors and deeply wants people to feel that this is their country. And so when he, in front of all those gentlemen, brought up the term DARPA, I almost fell out of my chair because I have never heard any Washington, D.C. person use that word. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency is what the acronym stands for, DARPA. And what it is the Pentagon's secretive research arm. And in this context of geoengineering, and that always includes the chemtrails, it's the one that weaponizes all sorts of things like HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska, which is really very crucial right next to the chemtrails. It's chemtrails and HAARP that we primarily hear about for the ionizing of our atmosphere, for all the broadcasts and the move toward digitization of just about everything, including biology.
Tell us about what he's doing about the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and also the revision of 2012. What's going on with that?
The Smith-Mundt Act was what protected Americans from being propagandized in their own country by their own political elites. And when Obama modernized it, quote unquote, basically what he did is he made it okay to use propaganda and lies and deception in America itself. He made it so that it was legal to lie and deceive with propaganda and other things. And that's when I heard Secretary Kennedy use that word, DARPA, I realized he was stepping outside that unwritten rule of Washington, D.C. And I was highly grateful because once you bring in the term of DARPA and put it right next to chemtrails, you realize that you're talking a weapon system. And that's what I've been trying to say through 4 books over the last 15 years at least, with the book that just came out, the Geoengineered Transhuman, is that this geoengineering that they make sound so warm and fuzzy and that it's going to help us with our climate change and global warming is really a weapon system.
Certainly a first for a government official to go into that arena.
Absolutely. That's the last thing they want people to realize is the weapon system that HAARP is, that all the ionospheric heaters that are involved in the HARP operation. It has to be known. It has to be part of the dialogue of what Secretary Kennedy and President Trump seem to be trying to do, is to bring this to the fore and not just bury it under national security as usual, or make it sound warm and fuzzy in the controlled media. And that's what we need. We need to face these things because this particular system is highly dangerous. Concepts like stratospheric aerosol injection, that's a term we've heard SAI for about 2 decades as a means of ameliorating global warming, so-called. And Kennedy insists that DARPA has moved beyond research and about what role research plays in the cover story of how America is producing weapons or weaponizing what most people don't know is weaponized. And that comes under the very famous 50 U.S. Code 1520A, restrictions on use of human subjects for testing of chemical or biological agents. Of course, this is very key to the 30-plus states that are now attempting to petition their legislatures for protection from the chemtrails that are overhead in their state, in their airspace. They know enough to know that this is affecting our health. So when they bring up DARPA, you know that something nefarious or at least something that the public should be informed of so they can take measures to protect themselves. Peer-reviewed studies have yet to confirm widespread chemical dispersal via aircraft. Now that is an outright lie. And that's in an article that I'm quoting from called the U.S. Health Secretary, Chemtrails Are Real and Must Be Stopped by S.D. Wells, because it's making it sound like we don't have any proof that aircraft are delivering these chemical trails. Well, that's ridiculous. We have tons of proof. So what's going on is, it seems to me that Kennedy is dropping a bomb, but he's doing it in little pieces here and there that indicate that he's going to pursue studying this. And regarding the term research, when you see the term research in the name of some sort of act or some sort of program, that generally refers back to trying to get around this 1520A, restrictions on use of human subjects. And if you think about it, with HARP, this high-frequency active auroral research project, you really need the environment in order to test this. You can't do it in a lab.
Talk about the chemtrails relating to geoengineering for our listeners, Elana, and the difference between weather modification and geoengineering.
Yes, this is where it gets a little complicated because I can see what's happening. In fact, the disinformation is out that it has been stopped. It's not being used anymore. I've had people tell me that. It is certainly being used because it is one of the most powerful weapon systems in the world. This can be controlled more easily because it's a different kind of system. This is Tesla technology. This is not the same thing as the atomic bomb technology, the Einsteinian. You see, the chemtrails are essential, to my knowledge, of keeping the atmosphere ionized by dumping all the different chemicals that we hear about that HARP is responsible for activating and that is coming down from the sky delivered by jets. This is to keep the atmosphere sort of like a battery or an antenna, a really intense antenna, which can handle trillions, literally trillions of wireless operations. They even have a patent for using sound as the chemicals come out the aft of the jets or out of the wings. The sound makes it turn invisible so that we won't see the trails.
Elana, what's the synthetic biology connection to chemtrails, if you could put it succinctly?
We started with Morgellons, and a lot of people thought it was the way it was framed, that it was a skin ailment that you simply picked up in the environment somewhere. But it wasn't. It was being delivered by the chemtrails. And now we've taken that work back up because that's exactly what is going on in the blood now. 5 years beyond when the jabs began, And we see that this is the assault of the synthetic biology along with an assault of another very new technology, which is called nanotechnology. One of the things we have to be concerned about are obviously the chemicals that are being released from the jets. Next comes the nanotechnology, and that includes the heavy metals. Heavy metals are very much involved in the chemicals. The nanotech is generally something that has been engineered and built and is on a very tiny scale. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. So, you're not going to see one little individual nanometer up there. You're going to see whole hordes of them in the chemical trails. They're all around us now. They're in the walls of our homes. They're in the dust. All of these chemical changes are influenced by the electromagnetism that now makes our entire world wireless. And that electromagnetic piece is extremely important to your health. Not just the chemicals that you're breathing in, not just the heavy metals that are among those chemicals. The electromagnetic aspect, which most people don't even think of, that's coming down from all of the satellites that are up there, thousands and thousands of satellites now. All of that has to do with what I call the space fence, which ultimately will control your nervous system. And so that's where you begin to see what kind of a weaponization we're talking about here. It's a manifold weaponization and has pretty much taken over our world.
Elana, Dennis Kucinich introduced a Chemtrails Act in October of 2001, but he got nowhere with it.
Yes, he started that 3 weeks after 9/11 because he recognized what I'm saying about the technology. He recognized that that was done with a very serious weapon system. He recognized that the chemtrails were actually part of the weapon system. And they being the ubiquitous they, went after him with everything they had in order to stop him. And they were able to stop him. They killed the bill. That was H.R. 2977. They killed the bill in committee, and then they killed his career in government. But the chemtrails are indeed key to keeping the world ionized for all of these operations, whether it's a weapon and turning a hurricane into a Cat 5, or if it's simply a matter of wanting to grow seed in one place and destroy crops in another. All of this can be done with this weapon system.
So you're saying weather disasters such as hurricanes, tornadoes, floods are connected to chemtrails and geoengineering?
Yes, absolutely. And lasers and radar. And those weather events all depended on HAARP. It wasn't the only ionospheric heater involved, but it was the primary one because it's so powerful.
Cheryl, Elana is on it, isn't she?
She really is, and it was really interesting in talking with her this time. And we talked about the things that are happening now in relation to all of her work and research over the years. Now, these things are in the news, whereas before it was all taboo in terms of talking about it. Chemtrails were considered conspiracy theories. But now that Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. has come out and said what he said, he gave it some validity. And then with some other things happening, with people reporting some lab results and findings, which we'll have in our second part with Mike Adams. But it's all becoming part of the news now, and that has really energized, I believe, the state politicians to bring this issue to the forefront. That's why around over 30 states have either proposed or some of them have pushed through laws concerning the chemtrails and geoengineering and weather modification. So it's really a changing time.
And what exactly are we going to hear in part two?
Well, in part two, we're going to go over a number of things, and it's really going to be fascinating because she'll talk about the different geoengineering programs that are involved, and we'll have some information on a bizarre lab test that Health Ranger Mike Adams did that produced some really concerning findings that are really, really surprising. We'll talk about that along with some other items where she will continue to just connect all of the dots with the synthetic biology.
All right, we'll come back with part 2 with Cheryl Jones, and then we have open lines with her next hour on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back, George Norrie, along with Cheryl Jones. Cheryl, do you remember seeing chemtrails when you were in your KC days?
I don't remember them in my KC days, but I do remember them later on. Certainly in the 90s, I remember seeing them. And then as the years passed on, I remembered, seeing more and more and taking more notice of them. Of course, then it was still considered a conspiracy theory, and there's the conversation that it's just contrails from jets, but there's a difference in the contrails and the chemtrails, one that stays confined and doesn't last long, and one that expands and continues to linger in the sky for a long time, and that would be the chemtrails. And then since then, a lot of people have done their own testing, as has Health Ranger Mike Adams, and we talk about that in part 2. Some of the amazing results that he has found in looking under the microscope, in looking at some chemtrail and some of the strange fog residue that has been reported around in various locations as well. But yes, they certainly in recent years have been far more noticeable. More people are talking about them. I think more people are looking up and paying attention. And certainly with Secretary Kennedy's acknowledgement of chemtrails and support of the validation of that, I think that goes a long way, coupled with all of the action that's taking place at the state legislatures. Over 30 states have at least proposed. Several of them have passed laws. They're all individually created laws, so they're a little different. But it's bringing attention to this issue of what's going on in our skies. We need to know. We need to know how our tax dollars are spent.
Let's talk about part 2. Go ahead.
Okie dokie. Alrighty. Coming up in part 2, it's going to be a continuation of our conversation with scientific environmental researcher, writer, and author Elana Freeland on the geoengineered transhumanism, the hidden technologies of HAARP, chemtrails, the 5 and 6G, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, and the scientific effort to transform humanity. She goes into detail about the different programs and shares more information about how so many different things around us can be connected to the chemtrails. And some of those various programs would really be quite amazing. It goes from weather engineering to geophysical engineering to directed energy weapons to surveillance and neural manipulation surveillance to digital, synthetic, and biological nanotechnology, and also cloaking, obscuration, and detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms. So let's listen now to part 2 of our conversation.
Elana, you have a list of 7 geoengineering operations that you focus on. And if you could just give our listeners an idea of what's going on with that and why you think it's key. Number 1 is weather engineering.
That's right. Weather engineering leads the list. It's very important. As you know, you can use weather engineering in order to actually produce energy as well as utilize energy already there. So this list is due to the observations long ago of the independent scientist Clifford Carnicom. He talks about these 7 operations. So what I'm saying is it's not just about the weather, folks. There's a lot of stuff going on from this program that has to do with its weaponization. Next is chemical electromagnetic. That includes production of plasma. A lot of the clouds that we see now are not the same clouds that we had 20 years ago, for example, where you had ice crystals, water, and particulates. These are plasma clouds. They're produced perhaps by laser and particulates. And this is a way to control the clouds. You can make them heavier. You can make them lighter. You can place them on a monitor at a military base. So it's crucial and key. Planetary geophysical engineering, I would put the geoengineered fires there now, because the geoengineered fires are, as I've talked with firemen who have approached me for knowledge about this microwave way of producing fires and really burning people out so that the land is cheap and they can go after different ores in the soil. Then the fourth operation is directed energy weapons. We often think of space as kind of like Star Wars kinds of directed energy weapons, but this is a little different because this makes use of the Internet of Things, the Internet of Nano Things, the Internet of Bodies. There are many, many ways to create directed energy weapons as long as you can find a source for the energy that you need for the operation. Then the fifth is the surveillance and neural manipulation. Surveillance is, we all know, they can read a postage stamp for miles in space. Neural manipulation is often run by satellite now. Much of the mind control going on now, and there's a great deal of it going on, even though you may not know about it, is run from satellites. Then the sixth operation is digital synbio. That means digital synthetic biology, nanotech, and you add nanotech to that, and equals transhumanism. So there is this operation going on, and the components of it are primarily very, 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 very tiny, and they are delivered from space for us to breathe in. And we breathe it in, it goes into our lungs, it goes into the blood, and then it goes into the blood-brain barrier. And these are transceivers. They can transmit and receive. And that's the purpose of our 5G and 6G. And if you think that we don't have 6G yet, you're wrong. We do have 6G. It went up when the 5G went up. Both of these are very tiny waves and are really the best for dealing with the tiny world, I call it, that is now being delivered by the inoculation and by aerosols coming from the sky, all under the aegis of big pharma and big medicine and, of course, the military. And the final seventh is the cloaking, obscuration, and detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms. There are all kinds of creatures now because we actually have a patent for non-organic life forms. You may not think that that's possible, but it is possible. But this is sort of my grid I follow as I'm trying to give a whole picture of how this geoengineering operation works so that we understand that there are many things that can be done with electromagnetism, chemicals, biology, or synthetic biology.
Amazing. Now, there is one bizarre chemtrail-related event currently unfolding in the news. It's a bizarre chemtrail residue sample lab testing done by health advocate, health ranger Mike Adams and Dr. Jane Ruby from Florida. And the lab results are alarming. And it's what Mike calls, and I'm quoting here, alien-like organisms with worm-like structures. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the way it appears when you first encounter these entities. Now, as to whether it's actually engineered, bioengineered, that will take more research. We're seeing this all the time. I'm in a very good microscope group, microscopy, out of Australia, and I'm watching these very bright people with their excellent microscopes look at human blood, live human blood, look at various things like insulin that diabetics take, dental anesthetics, anything with a liquid nature, to see that they all have the same stuff in them. And it's very similar to what was in the CV19 serums. I think what we're saying is that the genie has been let out of the lamp, and we are now looking at a world that has been impregnated by synthetic biology intentionally.
Mike says that they look like digital ferns with circuit boards. And the test lab showed that the material tested was biologic self-replicating. So that is really concerning.
Yeah, and that's what we're finding in the microscope group is self-replicating, self-assembling, and it's as if it's alive, but it is not a carbon-based living creature. It is something else.
Ilana, recently there was a story about Canada in the process of testing aerosol medical experiments in terms of adjusting a person's mind. That would fall under neural manipulation, would it not?
Well, it could. Imagine that you could have a vaccine or a substance that you release from high above in the stratosphere, and that it will actually produce things in your blood system or in your respiratory system. I think what they want to do is they want to give us the shot from the sky, because it turns out, and I was surprised by this because I didn't think this was true. I thought it would be a weaker agent coming down. No, it turns out that the one coming from the sky will be much stronger and will inoculate a lot of people. And I think it makes sense that they would start delivering the shots that they want us to have, that they don't want us to avoid, such as we did 5 years ago, and that it would start in the atmosphere, which they can control the winds of the atmosphere, they can control the jet stream and carry things wherever they decide to carry them. The other thing is that the ionosphere above us, it is now controlled by the U.S. Air Force. So that in itself indicates that this planetary control system is a done deal. This is not something that's in the process. So that whole thing about how you get something into the human body, this is the time that we need to really pay close attention to this, because the elites, or whatever you want to call them, they have agendas that they are pursuing. And one of the agendas they're pursuing is transhumanism. And what is transhumanism? Transhumanism is simply utilizing some aspects of organic life that we are all accustomed to, but treating it in such a way that it actually turns into some sort of hybrid, or it actually replaces the organic nature, such as our carbon nature or our protein nature, with, well, imagine with a silicon replacement, so that our nature begins to change. And I think this is where we are now.
Ilana, what's different about the role and purpose of chemtrails that we see today and what we saw decades ago?
Well, it's pretty amazing to me that they're going to deliver vaccinations. And I do think it's much more than another CV-19 or whatever they're going to call it. I think it also includes children, vaccinating of children of whole societies around the world. Of course, they are being changed all the time. Early on, they had a lot of barium and strontium in the trails, and we were finding that in chemical analysis. And that had to do, it seemed to us, with holograms, with being able to produce holograms. Now I would say it's mirrors. We have plasma mirrors that can be used in the sky in order to keep things from being seen. And so the chemtrails are chemical and electromagnetic and nanotech. So all of that can be changed according to the agendas that are ongoing. Can you poison an entire area of the world? Oh, yes. Yes, you can.
So in summarizing, you're saying everything concerning transhumanism, directed energy weapons, even wildfires, everything kind of connects back to chemtrails and geoengineering.
That's right. That is absolutely right.
Ilana, what's coming up next for you?
Well, I definitely have on the calendar a couple of very interesting things. And one of them is the talk that I'm going to give in August in Albuquerque at the Tesla Tech Conference. And that will be a conference of 5 days. I hear there are many intelligent inventors who will be there. I'm looking forward to that. I'm also writing my fifth and I hope last book that references geoengineering and what it's up to. And that book is called Remaining Human, The Nano-Synbio Assault and Directed Evolution.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. Ilana, where can people find all of your books, keep up with your work, your social media, and find out what you're doing next?
I pretty much recommend to people to look up Rudolf Steiner Bookstore in Seattle, Washington, and you can order all the books I've written there. I have 2 sites that I post on every day and comment on. The first is a Facebook site, and it's called EMF Planetary Engineering. And the other one is a Patreon site with my name, Elana Freeland, Patreon.
Elana, what a time in history to be alive. You must have been meant for such a time as this.
I think so. I'm a warrior through and through, and this is a war that calls upon almost all my resources.
Well, you've been great, and you've brought a wealth of information to us. Thank you again for joining us here tonight on Coast.
Thank you.
You know,